So a quick reminder that you probably don't need at this stage of the conference, but you still have your iPads, and you can send questions to the stage, to Tony and myself, and we'll try to see if we can get through as many as possible in this session, the second to last one, Disrupting Africa, Building Entrepreneurial Businesses. Now, when we were kids in school, and you were labeled a disruptor, you were usually singled out for punishment by detention or extra homework, or in my case, I went to an African school, so the cane, basically corporal punishment. But these days, to be called a disruptor is a good thing in business. Tony Fernandez gets called a disruptor all the time. In 2001, Tony introduced the first budget no-frills airline in Malaysia with the tagline, "Now everyone can fly." He transformed that tiny airline into one of the top low-cost airlines in the world, and if I'm not mistaken, the biggest in Asia. Am I right? He's since founded the Tune group of companies, and he also manages a Formula One team. He owns the English Premier League football team, Queen's Park Rangers, and he's the latest star of the reality TV show Apprentice Asia, where I guess you get to point your finger at aspiring businessmen and women and say, "You're fired," right? Or "You're hired," I guess, as the case may be. So, Tony Fernandez, please give him a warm welcome to the AGBF.
Thank you.
Now, as I said, the theme of this session, Tony, is Disrupting Africa, Building Entrepreneurial Businesses. Before I get into what perhaps plans you have for Africa, I think we should really sort of start with a general question. You've, all through your career, really thrown the rule book out of the window and created something special. You've done things really in your own way. Perhaps we should start with Air Asia's motto, which is dream the impossible, believe the unbelievable, and never take no for an answer. What does that mean?
Well, actually, it's my motto, which became Air Asia. I came from the music business. I knew nothing about planes, and I'll give you a little bit of a background. I was in music for 12 years. I went through 3 mergers. Went from Warner Communications to Time Warner to AOL, and we'd come up with terms like EBITDA, earnings before everything you don't like, and then calling it cash flow. What about the $8 billion in the balance sheet? So just one day, it's funny how you make your career. There was one moment when Steve Case was telling us his vision for the new AOL Time Warner, and I was thinking to myself, what drugs is he taking? Please give me some of it. And I decided that I wasn't going to be part of this anymore, and I just walked out of the room, sold my stock options, and quit. My boss was thrilled because he always wanted to get rid of me because he thought I was after his job, which I was. And I flew back to London not knowing what I was going to do. I was sitting in a bar and I saw Stelios of EasyJet talking about his airline. I thought, wow, this looks interesting.
And that's where you got the idea, from
Correct,
Stelios?
From Stelios, 100%. And I went to Luton Airport and I saw people flying to Barcelona for £8, flying to Paris for £6, and I thought, wow, this would be an amazing thing if we could bring it to Asia. Now, there's a very fine line between brilliance and stupidity, but I thought, well, I was young enough, I'm going to give it a try. Yeah. So that was believing the unbelievable, and I came back to Malaysia. I bought Air Asia for 25 cents. I remember going to the owners of Air Asia and saying, can I buy your airline? And they said yes.
Because it was a government subsidized airline.
It was a government-linked company.
It was creaky, moribund, a few cobwebs around.
No, not that bad.
And you turned it around within a year, didn't you?
Yeah.
You made it profitable within a year.
Yeah, Well, we had to because we had no money. And I remember trying to buy the airline. I said, can I buy this airline? And he said, yes, you can have it tomorrow. And I thought, well, that's a warning sign. And then he said, how much you want to buy it for? And I cheekily said, 1 ringgit, which is 25 cents. And he still said, you can have it tomorrow. I thought, damn, I should have said, pay me to take this airline away. And so we bought Air Asia 3 days before 9/11, 2 planes, 250 staff, welcome to the airline business, And over the last 13 years, we've gone from 2 planes to now we have 180 planes. And this year, first year we carried 200,000 passengers, and this year we'll carry 52 million passengers. So that's where I always tell people, dream the impossible. You know, I grew up selling Madonna records, and now we're moving passengers. There's lots of similarity between the music industry and the airline business.
And you often compare to Richard Branson, who you worked for.
Yeah, Richard Branson gave me my first job. I was at Virgin Records, signing artists such as Culture Club and Duran Duran and Aha. And in fact, AirAsia X we did together, but now he's sold out. But he lost a bet to me not so long ago, and I made him dress up as a stewardess.
You made Richard Branson dress up as a stewardess?
There are many pictures on the internet, and it took me 22 years, but he finally worked for me.
So for 22 years you've wanted to do this and then finally get your... That's probably what's been driving you all along, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about your strategy, because it's an interesting one and I want to apply it to Africa. I'll ask you about what you're doing, what your plans are for Africa in a moment, but your strategy has been a very simple one. Serve the underserved, essentially. Look at those markets that other people don't see. Get in there, don't be afraid. Apply that to Africa.
Yeah, well, let me talk about Asia first, because that similarity is there. I mean, there was no low-cost airline. Everyone said this can't work. How are you going to compete with Malaysian Airlines, Singapore Airlines, Thai, etc.? But the number of people that were flying was very small because they couldn't afford it. So I said, well, there's a huge untapped market. That was one. Two, the connectivity within Asia was poor. To move from one place to another place was very difficult and very expensive. So I saw that as a massive opportunity, and that's how we've grown as we've grown. I mean, we've had every calamity known to mankind: bird flu, SARS, tsunami, earthquakes, coups d'etats, governments against us. You name it, we've had it. But when you have low fares, it's amazing what you can go through that. I mean, I was joking earlier at lunch. You know, during SARS, no one wanted to fly. They all thought they were going to die. And I said to my marketing team, look, triple your advertising now. And they all looked at me and said, are you nuts? And I said, no, this is the best time to build our brand because no other airline is advertising. And it's the best time to build a brand during a crisis. Plus, I knew Malaysians very well. If you put a fare low enough, they will risk their lives. Okay? 800 ringgit to Penang, no, I'm not going at SARS. 80 ringgit, who cares about SARS?
I mean, you talk about SARS. Of course, we've got Ebola in West Africa at the moment, and I think we're going to have a segment tomorrow. I'm moderating something on the tourism industry, so we'll really be drilling down on that subject matter.
But I really didn't answer your question. Africa, I think, has enormous potential for a low-cost airline. There's lots of nationalism to get over. There are lots of regulatory areas to get over. But what we've done is created new markets of tourism. We went into secondary cities, and the beneficiaries of AirAsia are migratory workforces. You create much more freedom of movement of labor force. Tourism has exploded due to AirAsia. Places that never had a flight, we're now flying 32 times a day. You know, we went to Macau before Macau really became it. I remember because we couldn't afford Hong Kong Airport, we flew to Macau, and we said, well, at least you have a cheap fare to take you home when you lose all your money in the casinos. So we always were able to innovate and find new markets. So Africa has enormous potential, and you find through a low-cost airline, actually you make the continent a much smaller place. And SMEs, small, medium enterprise businessmen, generate tremendous amount of economic activity by expanding their business outside of their own market.
And you make it a really important point because throughout the day we've been talking about galvanizing the untapped potential of Africa and tapping into that potential from the Middle East. And when we talk about low-cost airlines, we're not just talking about the airline industry, we're talking about something that could catapult other businesses. If you're in Ghana and you want to get to Kenya, or if you just want to get next door, then to do business, if you've got a low-cost option, you can do that business. So it spreads, it riddles stardust over everything, doesn't it?
You create regional economies, you create, now I'm a big pusher of the ASEAN Economic Community. which is 10 countries in Southeast Asia.
If I told you that ASEAN had existed 13 years ago, we were sitting here, and I had said, hey, ASEAN's going to exist in 15 years, would you believe me that such a community would have existed?
I mean, ASEAN was always there, but
Yeah.
it was more of a political organization.
Yes.
But now it's
But as it
moving
stands.
but it needed brands such as ourselves, CIMB, etc.
To galvanize
to
it.
galvanize it. And I said, if you don't embrace ASEAN, we're going to get killed by the Chinese and the Indians, because they've got 1 billion people there. At least in ASEAN, you have 700 million people. It's a fantastic market, fantastic geography. And if you see what we've done in the tourism industry, we've created an own internal market there that just wasn't there before. So I see it very clearly in Africa.
Yeah, because that's where we are now, trying to get that homogenized market. So it's almost like history repeating itself, but just in Africa.
I mean, I remember and the connectivity between Asia and Africa is very, very poor.
Yes.
That's something that I would love to get into. I remember when I went to see the president of Ghana, I had to go via London to get to Ghana. And flying within Africa is very expensive. If you think AirAsia, a 2-hour per hour, we charge about $35. So a 2-hour flight is $70, which in most countries is the price of a taxi fare from the airport. So I think the potential, when you bring down the fares of opening up the market and creating markets that just wasn't there, is enormous. If every car in Kuala Lumpur was a Rolls-Royce, the market would be very small. If every hotel was a Ritz-Carlton, the market would be very small. So the airlines have generally only served a certain section of the market. And what we're trying to do is bust open the market through elasticity.
So, listen, we've got journalists all around with their scribbling away. Let's make some news here now. So what are your plans for Africa? Spell them out.
Well, I think the plans for me are very clear. I see, Asians are getting more and more adventurous. We've taken them to different parts of the world. You see Koreans, you see Thais, you see Indonesians, all looking for new places to go. And I think Africa is an unknown product to them, and I would love to start flights from
How
my
would you do that?
hubs.
What would be your
Well,
first
from
step? You've
Bangkok.
talked about going through India.
Yeah, India is we now have 6 airlines. India, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Japan. India would be a great hub to the west. From a hub in Bangalore or somewhere like that, we could bring in Asians and then fly them to Africa. But I also think with the aircraft, we've worked very hard with Airbus to get the 330neo. With that kind of aircraft, we can have direct flights from Kuala Lumpur to Nairobi, to Ethiopia. There are many places that we think have huge potential. The whole Maghreb area has enormous tourism potential, from Morocco to Tunisia, Algeria. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity for us. In my other businesses, we already have some hotels in Africa, in Tanzania and Nigeria, and that's really going very well. So I think the potential is large.
You're tremendously good at talking to government officials, going from place to place, something that can be quite daunting for any company that has ambitions beyond its own country. And you've got the scars to prove it. You've been around and knocking on those doors. I suppose if you're looking at Africa, African governments have to figure out what part they play. A question has just come in that refers directly to that. It says, how important a role are the governments in Africa required to play in helping low-cost airlines fly in Africa? There's also another question specifically about Virgin Nigeria. Also, airlines, Virgin Nigeria and others have struggled to crack that market.
Yeah, I don't think I'm great with governments, to be honest.
You don't think so?
No.
You had some
I think
challenges in India, didn't you? Can you speak on?
I think India is a different animal by itself. But, in Asia, governments own everything. So sometimes the regulator owns the asset as well. And that creates a bit of a conflict and a bit of tension. But we've been able to navigate that through. I mean, the government owns Malaysian Airlines and the airport, similar in Thailand, similar in Indonesia. But I think we found a way through that. I think African governments have to sometimes, and this is the big it's amazing for me, coming from the music business, how powerful national airlines are, because they carry the flag or
Yes.
the name of the country, and they get enormous amounts of protection.
It's almost the biggest brand, isn't it, really,
Correct.
for a country?
It is. I mean, if you think of Singapore, the first thing you think of is Singapore Airlines. So the challenge for governments is to allow private entrepreneurship to come in. The challenge for governments is also to allow freedom and open skies, because, you know, some rights are hard to get, etc. So, and then the third thing for entrepreneurs is it's damn hard. There is no easy shortcut. It's been a real struggle for us, but we never gave up. We were very meticulous in everything we did. Go back to my credo, never take no for an answer. It took me 7 years to get Kuala Lumpur, Singapore as a route. That's 45 minutes of flying, but I was blocked by the Singaporeans, then I was blocked by the Malaysians, but I never gave up. I remember one of the reporters saying to me, "Tony, don't you get tired about fighting for this route?" Because I get tired reporting about it. And I said, you know, it's my job. I got to keep fighting it. And I irritated many people on both sides of the bridge. But now we're the largest airline flying Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, and now they're talking about a train between the two countries, high-speed train. And I said, I'm totally in favor of that. You know, people thought I'd be against it. It's anything that drives economic activities. So my one very simple point to governments is, if you put your people first, then the answers become very easy.
And I think that the people, if you're talking about Africa, you are talking about low cost has to win, really, because we're already there in many industries. If you, for example, I live in Lagos. If you drive over Falamo Bridge as you're coming into Lagos, you'll see people running beside your car selling water. Now, a bottle of water costs 50 naira, but they've broken that down into smaller, what they call pure water. That's what we call it. And they're basically little triangles of water, just enough to quench your thirst as you're sitting in a famous Lagos go-slow traffic jam. Everything is being broken down to price points, because that's essentially what sells. Now, if you're selling pure water, you'll sell more than if you're selling bottled water. So the low-cost the low-cost method, not just in airlines, has to work. It's obvious that almost Africa is primed and ready for low cost.
100%. 100%. And my limited times that I've gone to Africa, you can see it bursting to happen. And people will say, oh, Africa's not ready, or Japan's not ready. Africa actually is leading in many low-cost things. If you look at financial institutions, I've got, from my own financial institution company, a lot of the ideas that I've taken are from Africa. In mobile money, internet banking. Because when I started AirAsia, no one used the internet, and 90% of people didn't have a credit card. But my way to break the dominance of Malaysian Airlines was using technology.
Yeah.
And so we went after the internet, and we only put our inventory on the internet, and people said, oh, it'll never work, people don't have the internet. I said, again, if you put a good enough deal, people will find their way to the internet. And then we facilitated it with, you know, prepaid cards, mobile money, etc. Now,
like MPEG.
85% of our business is there. Now, if you go on the Virgin story, you know, Africa looks sexy, India looks sexy, Malaysia looks sexy, but it's damn hard work. And you've got to prepare to roll your sleeves up, really get into the market, really market. I mean, AirAsia, when I started with 2 planes, you know, no one wanted to fly with us. They thought we were not safe. You might be flying next to a chicken. You'll fall out of the sky. You have to carry your own bags onto the plane. And no one took us seriously. But then I did something that was very painful for me. I sponsored Manchester United as a football team. You know, very painful because I hate that football club. But you have to be a prostitute once in a while. And
Don't write that down. Don't write that down.
And especially painful after they beat me 4-0 the other day. But as soon as we
sponsored Manchester
United, we only had 7 planes, and we were a tiny little brand, right? There was Audi there, Budweiser, AIG. People thought, oh wow, AirAsia must be a serious airline. And I remember going to Old Trafford and watching I never watched the game, because I hated them anyway. I was just watching the signboard. right? And
Waiting for your name to come up.
Oh wow, AirAsia, AirAsia. It was very cool. But that's how it is. It's hard work. You know, I still, after 13 years on, I'm a cabin crew every month. I carry bags every 2 months, and I check in every 3 months. I check in every 3 months, because that is the hardest job in the world, checking in a low-cost passenger. I do it for 2 reasons, which I think is very relevant. We couldn't have gone from 2 planes to 190 without developing human capital. And people will say, oh, how am I going to get pilots in Africa? How am I going to get engineers? And we had the same problem, but we did it in an unconventional way. So I carried bags because I wanted to know what was happening in the operation. It's a very, very tough business. And I'm a steward, etc., so I know what's happening in the airline. Because cost is a killer for us. And if we, as senior leaders, if we're not on top of the business, we can die very quickly. Plus, I wanted to meet talent. And I'll give you 2 examples. When I was carrying bags, you know, we used to, 737s, we could just throw the bags into the hole. Well, not throw the bags in. We lovingly put the bag in.
Yeah. You caress the bags
kiss them
onto the carousel.
Here's Dr. Chang's bag. We kiss it, rub it nicely, put it into the.
Was a slip there, my friend.
Because he's a very powerful Korean. And then when the Airbus came, it was slightly higher, you know, 3 inches, 4 inches higher, so we couldn't throw the bags in. And my boy said to me, we need belt loaders. And I said, no, can't take belt loaders, it's too expensive. So the next time I was carrying bags, they put me on the Indonesian flights. Now, people who fly with us generally bring their house with them. And people who fly to Indonesia bring their neighbor's house as well. So there were a lot of bags. And I almost destroyed my back in the process. And I thought, okay, I'm wrong. You're right. We go buy belt loaders. And now, if I didn't work, I would have made a mistake. I would have destroyed many people's backs, and I probably would have started a union. We have 15,000 staff. We have no unions. I think there's any airline in our size of that. The second reason was to develop people. I was carrying bags and being a steward, and I met lots of really bright kids who just didn't have money for further education, but were much smarter than me. So when we had our first cadet pilot program, I said, look, I don't care whether you have O-levels, A-levels, whatever. If you want to be a pilot, we'll fund you. My own pilots were great. They donated some of their time to support these young kids. And of our first 18 cadets, 11 came from within the company. There were check-in assistants, there were baggage boys, and so on. And a lot of them had left school at 13. Thanks. And, you know, it's the most fantastic thing of my career. There was one boy who carried bags who left school at 12. He got the highest marks in Malaysian Flying Academy. And 2 years ago, he became a captain in AirAsia. So you join to carry bags, and now you're a captain of a brand new A320. And we have hundreds of those examples now. And that's how, you know, my job is to turn a raw diamond into a diamond, is to find something in you that you didn't even realize yourself.
Do you think that then, going into Africa, whether you're there or not, African company, or whether you're a company from outside wanting to go into Africa, that you have to have within your DNA some level of social responsibility like you're talking about?
I think it's social responsibility is one, but break the rules. You know, we didn't hire people just because they went to Oxford or Cambridge.
Yeah, on
we
CVs.
hired people who had a dream, a passion.
And on attitude.
Choose to do it. And then we just, you know, there were no female pilots in Malaysia. And I said to my chief pilot, why are there no female pilots? And he came up with the most ridiculous answer. And I said, if a woman can run a country, she can certainly fly a plane. And now we have 52 female pilots. The other day was history. Captain was female, co-pilot was female, all the cabin crew were female, and all the passengers were male. That last bit's not true. But again, we would have missed out a whole cross-section of the audience of the population if we didn't do that. And there's a great story. There was a very beautiful woman who met me in a bar, very rare.
Where's this going?
She was a cabin crew in AirAsia, and she said, look, my dream is to be a pilot. I said, go for it. She was very smart. She took the exams. She passed. she called me up 6 months later and said, look, everyone says I'm really beautiful. Can I take part in Miss Thailand? I said, interesting concept. I said, okay, if you win Miss Thailand, I get to use your photograph for the rest of your life for free. And she said, okay. She won Miss Thailand, came 5th in Miss Universe, went back, finished her cadetship, became a co-pilot. 2 weeks ago, became a captain. So we're the only airline in the world with a Miss Thailand flying for them. Beat that, Singapore Airlines.
Okay,
but just one thing. Just the real moral of the story, though, I love that. Can you keep a famous compere quiet? The real moral of the story is because we didn't have much hierarchy. You know, I dressed up today because Dr. Chang is a very formal guy, but generally I run around in T-shirt and jeans. That we have no hierarchy, so that the girl came up to me and said, this is my dream. At AirAsia, no one is afraid of reaching for their dreams. And that's our unique success. That we have 12,000 people who believe they can do anything. I always say I'd rather have 12,000 brains working for us than just 10. Many Asian companies, the top management decide everything, and the rest are implementers. I said that's a waste. And I think, from my experience for new African companies, your biggest asset is your people. And it's amazing if you give them the confidence and the trust. And I always say, I don't mind failure. I don't mind you trying and failing. Because if you don't try, you'll never know. And you must encourage innovation. You know, everyone talks about innovation. It's such a buzzword. But you have to create a place that people are not afraid of being innovative. So I think that's our biggest success story.
And when you're talking about Africa, you're talking about entrepreneurial zeal. Everybody knows that's coupled also with this young, vibrant, hungry, creative group of young people who are ready. Their guns are cocked and fired, and they're ready to fire. I read somewhere that when you were put on the spot and asked what was the best piece of guidance you could give these young people was don't listen to anyone else. Is that right?
I mean, you know, parents are the worst thing. They give you the worst advice because most of the time they're trying to live their life through you. And other people will tell you, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. It's because, and if you listen to them, then you're wrong because if they could have done it, they would have done it themselves. So you've got to believe in your own ability. And I always say to people, go for it. Because you don't want to sit there at 55 and say, I wish I did that.
What if? Yeah.
It's too late. I say try, and if you fail, try again, because you only have one life. You know, it's great that we all live. And I don't sit there and worry about QPR losing or whatever. It's been an amazing dream for me. I grew up listening to football on the radio, shortwave radio, BBC World Service. You know, you had to use the radio. There was no satellite TV and all that. Hold the radio upside down, put it by the fridge. And then one day I'm sitting at the Etihad Stadium. Either we get relegated or Man City win the league, and Manchester United don't. It was quite ironic for me. I thought, wow, this is unbelievable, right? It's really about dreams. I used to listen to football on the radio, and here I am at the Etihad Stadium. And we're down to 10 men, and we're winning 2-1. Khaldoon slips me a big check, and we lose 3-2 during the game. No, that's not true. Reporters, don't write that. But it was great. You know, we stayed up, Man City won, and Manchester United didn't win the championship. But the thing is about dreams. It's amazing what you can do if you put your own energy in, and that's what I encourage young people. Just last week, I was at the Tory Party conference, and they had lots of young entrepreneurs from all over the world. And the ones that really caught my attention were young kids from Africa, from Nigeria, from Ghana, and they've all been emailing me today and yesterday with loads of ideas about what they want to do. And 2 or 3 of them said, I'd love to start an airline. But the energy I saw in these young kids
tremendous,
was amazing, and the confidence. I
see that a lot, yeah.
And that's what I think our future is, because I did this TV show, The Apprentice, and I'm a much nicer version of Donald Trump.
Go on, do it.
And I have a better hairstyle.
Let me see you say you're fired. Do it, go on.
you're fired.
Okay.
And I'm not very good at that bit. But the best thing about doing that show was seeing the energy in young Asian kids.
For the young entrepreneurs.
And the fact that they weren't scared. And I think that's the future of Africa, is in the youth, if you give them that energy.
From your mouth to God's ears. Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Fernandez of Air Asia. Give him a round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Now we'll final session, innovation and leadership. So I'll call on the speakers and the moderator for that to come and take the stage. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you very much.